onward, I guess.
Hi, everyone. My name is Amy Chen, and I'm Director of Entrepreneurship Programs at NYC Media Lab. I'll be moderating our next panel, focusing on machine-driven media and health and sports. So I'd like to invite the panelists to come up to the stage here. And just bring it back to our original themes for today regarding how data is really changing the way media is being, produced, consumed, distributed, and monetized. We put together this panel to consider health and sports, particularly for, how people are always looking for new media and content in these areas. So we'd love to, introduce everyone here. I'll go down the line, perhaps, just so you can share who you are, what you're doing, and how is it that you, are focusing within health or sports to share, best practices, case studies, lessons learned about how to apply new technology within organizations when we're building your own products, and how is it that these two verticals can showcase for other verticals what's new in data science. So James, if you'd like to start.
Sure. So I'm James Huerta. I'm an executive producer at Havas. Havas is a global network of creative and media agencies that work to do advertising, more and more products and services, type development, experiences for various Fortune 500 clients. We try to play at the intersection of culture, design, and technology as kind of the sweet spot of the stuff that we like to create and build. Specifically, I run production for a unit called Havas Cognitive, which really looks at how we can apply artificial intelligence and other emerging technologies to create cooler experiences and drive business results for our clients. And so that means like chatbots, voice interfaces, all kinds of
Right.
things like that.
And I know you focus on prototyping as well within the agency, really looking at what's off the shelf, how could you put together quick experiments as you're working with, large brands and clients.
Very much so, yeah. So we do a lot of like workshops and fast prototyping to try things out and get them in front of people.
Great. Courtney?
I'm Courtney. I'm the co-founder of a startup called Ovee. We're building a platform for women's reproductive health, specifically something that can bridge all of the gaps that a woman experiences when she's trying to navigate her own personal health as well as the healthcare system. And we started out building almost a diagnostic medical chatbot and then quickly realized that that's probably not the best application of a chatbot interface for this. So now we're building more of a search concierge for women. So if you have an issue, you can talk with us and we'll point you in the direction of a resource that might help rather than diagnosing anyone, because when the stakes are so high, especially with your health, we don't really want to provide misinformation. So we're just using a chat interface as a way to navigate the really fragmented and complex women's healthcare network right now.
Yeah. And Courtney actually has a background in design and technology.
Right.
So has a lot of experience with prototyping and understanding new interfaces, also with a twist in game design.
Yeah. So we do a lot of prototyping, specifically because all of that natural language processing, all of that machine learning takes a really long time to develop. So we found a lot of hacks and workarounds, which include a lot of manual labor for us, like us on the other end responding to women a lot of the time until the natural language processing gets to a level where we can comfortably respond with them. But yeah, it's been a lot of workarounds for the prototyping process.
Aaron?
Hi. Wow. I have a naturally loud voice. My name is Aaron Oliker. I'm the Chief Innovation Officer for a company called BioDigital. We develop a human body visualization platform, and it's akin to a Google Earth of the human body. So essentially, we've modeled out in 3D. It's cloud-based. It's not linked to any device. It can be on anything. We've modeled every nerve, every vessel of a normalized human body. We have over 14,000 models, both male and female anatomy. And now we're modeling out every disease state and condition known to man. And eventually, we're going to model out all the disease states and treatment. So it's a big work. We're busy. And so our system's usually embedded in other systems. So it's very easy to take we have an API, we have an SDK. You can put it in augmented reality. So our typical clients are also students. We have an app where students can use our system to learn about anatomy. But more interesting is the ability to take our system and embed it into other systems and have that interact. So we're embedded in electronic health records. We're embedded in hospitals. We're embedded in these panels for patient education. There are a lot of different use cases for our system, surgical training.
Right, and then I know for you, data is the content that your users are really getting access to in new ways, in interactive ways.
Yeah, it's absolutely fascinating. Every day, I'm on the phone every day with people. As a chief innovation officer, you want to see what's going on and how people use your technology, and I'm always astounded. Just like the analogy, the Googler for the human body, you're always finding these new applications for your systems. And you know, there's metadata that can be embedded inside of the models. So there are very interesting ways that our system could be used to map the body and hold data inside anatomy and disease states and conditions. So it's been fascinating. Yeah, the content is the data, and then data can be put on top of that data. So it's a lot of fun to see how people use it.
Thanks. Noah?
Hey y'all, I'm Noah Chestnut. I'm with Bleacher Report. So I'm responsible for all products related to mobile, in particular iOS and Android apps. And yeah, that means we traffic in trade news, sports news, highlights, rumors, all the stuff that makes fans super happy and excited about sports.
Great. So I would love to start with a question for Aaron and Courtney. You know, when you're looking at applying automation technology within health media content, what are best practices or case studies that you can share regarding how decisions are then made with automation technology, in health?
I think the answer would be carefully. You want to be very careful with people's health and making automated decisions. So there are companies that have come to BioDigital where they want to have a visualization layer too. They might have some artificial intelligence system where they have a symptom checker. This happens a lot where a company might have a symptom checker and they're looking at the electronic health record to say, how does this, trying to make a diagnosis as a result of that. And so we don't do that component of it. We provide another layer on top of it. But I think you have to be very careful. I think it's more of an augment that you do rather than something you'd solely rely upon. The other thing in terms of automation, there are really good uses, especially with the electronic health record, where health records can be disconnected and you have a lot of different things going on with the patient. So you might want to have flags to get raised. If a patient has certain conditions or has allergies or something like that, it might not get noticed. And artificial intelligence or these systems can help raise a flag, and that can be very beneficial during a consultation.
Yeah, and I know for your technology and your product, you have doctors essentially using this for pattern recognition of how they're navigating the body and how they're trying to assess how disease is moving throughout. So there could be, a relation to how a recommendation is made, or.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we had one dramatic case, I think, that it was actually in the New York Post and a bunch of different publications where just the use of the BioDigital human as a map and these doctors, it's more of a navigation tool where these doctors were able to map. This woman had a cancer in her hip, and the typical surgery for that cancer would be she wouldn't walk again if they would just remove it through normal convention. And this is a little, the question's a little off, but I'm just talking about the map of the human body. And so they use that data to find another navigation route where the woman did not become paralyzed. It was an NYU doctor who did it and they were able to successfully perform the surgery, and the woman did walk, finding another way. So there were all sorts of data pathways to find new ways to perform surgeries and to kind of avoid some of the traditional problems that we've had in the past. So it's exciting.
Courtney, I'm curious if you could share, based on the chat interface that you're working on.
Yeah, I could not echo your thoughts more. It's something that you have to be really careful with. And as I guess this isn't great for me to say, but I'm very pessimistic about AI in general. But I do think there are some really intrinsic things that automation does really well, such as like filtering and sorting and recognizing patterns that we as humans wouldn't naturally notice. But there are also things that a computer is just really lousy at doing. Like if we have a woman who's diagnosed with an STI, is she going to want to talk to like a bot about her diagnosis, or is she going to want to call her best friend to talk it out? So there are certain things that humans are just intrinsically better at doing, and a lot of that comes with the therapy side of things, or a lot of it comes with the conversational side of things that I think we're still a ways behind. So we've been looking at AI more as what can we use it for that it's inherently very good at doing. So we're using it more in sorting and recognizing patterns and that instead of consoling somebody after a traumatic event.
And even as you are developing your chat service on multiple platforms, what is it that you're testing for in terms of engagement and how your users are actually responding to this new content?
Yeah, so that's been a challenge because originally we started off like, oh, we can automate everything and, a lot of the information is the same, so we can automate these responses, but, a lot of the feedback is it felt really cold and impersonal, and figuring out how we balance this automation with a human touch point in there. So we've been testing what elements need to be automated, and then where do we as humans, or where does a medical expert need to step in to give that humanized empathy to our users.
And then moving to the sports side, I'm curious if Noah and James, you could share, how is it that personalization and the fan experience relates to automation and new technology?
Sure thing. Sports are great. Like I've worked in products and tooling and data tools for elections and riots and financial crises, and they're incredible to cover and exhilarating, but there's not consistent structure that you share with your audience in terms of how you talk about it, what's predictable in the events. And this sounds kind of cheesy, but like sports are an incredible cheat. It's like when someone comes to us, they have all these identities, and they're really simple, and there's so much rich metadata associated with each. And it's super fun, because it's like, if I know you're a Knicks fan, and you went to Rutgers, and you also follow the Yankees, and you weirdly like the LA Lakers too, because your dad grew up in LA, we can cover all of that, and we can match you in so many fascinating ways. But not only that, the way media is structured, and this is something that platforms we partner, compete, have very odd relationships with, have learned from, right? It's like every beat writer is on Twitter, is on Facebook, is on Instagram, associates that team and location metadata with their work. These are all things as a publisher we get to embrace and automate and figure out ways in which it not only supplements our work, but it just enriches what it means to be a fan. Because what's great about sports fans is they're incredibly hungry for information. It's on one hand entertainment, but on the other hand, it's also quasi-professional, and this is even before all the sports gambling things that's going to happen over the next 5 years, and I'm sorry for everyone has to deal with this. If AI is pessimistic, sports gambling times AI is just, ugh. Anyways, automation is great because there's an abundance of information, and you have a super hungry audience, and there's a lot of consistent language and signal we can marshal off of that. And I think kind of one thing that's been neat being the publisher side of it is we don't feel like we're constantly competing against just our peers and the platforms, but we actually see a lot of ways we can all work together and use that data to put together a pretty okay experience for fans.
Yeah, Noah, could you share, how is it that you are building these experiences for context of the fans, whether that's live or whether that's, they're receiving content through their mobile or something else? Like, how is it that you're making sure when you're automating, certain distribution of updates or of news in sports, like that's the right context?
Yeah, so one product that we have, and I can take zero credit for this, it's one of my great colleagues, Kelly Ju, worked on automating highlights. So we don't actually live broadcast any games. If you're an NBA fan, you can't watch a game on our phone. You have to watch it on TNT or ESPN or ABC. What we do is within 30 seconds of a highlight, and if it's a big play, you'll get a push alert on your phone, and you tap and expand it, and you can watch that highlight right on your lock screen. And the way we do that is we have every player. We have near real-time analysis of every clip of every play being cut into small clips, being categorized with if it's a dunk, if it's a three-point shot. We know if the game is close. We know how much time is left. We know if there are any timeouts left. And from that, we can have a human editor get all this data and then know immediately, oh, here's a perfectly cut highlight that happened 25 seconds ago or a minute ago. And then they can put it in our workflow, send it to fans, and they can target it where if you're a Warriors fan or a Rockets fan last night, the Warriors fan gets different language than the Rockets fan gets, all within a couple minutes. And those are types of things where we can also then learn if you open 5 of these highlights during a game, we'll start sending you more. And if that's a little too much for you, we'll scale back. And that's the type of stuff where we're using data to empower editors to make smarter choices and then really personalize that experience for hopefully each fan.
James, I'd love for you to share.
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, we touch sports and health, both amongst other things being at an agency. But one of the things that strikes me is that sports has this rich history, and it kind of came up earlier. Clay actually mentioned it this morning, of like this structured, a lot of that data is structured. Now, not the way Noah's talking about it, like there's no structure to, you need technology to tell you whether that shot was a three-pointer. But stats and all of this around sports, like people have been tracking this stuff for years and years and years. So in many ways, I feel sports has a little bit of a leg up with regard to the ability to take that data and make predictions and all kinds of stuff around that, versus health, which although there are lab values and all these things, like it doesn't come from this history of people tracking all of their stats, until relatively recently. And much of that data still exists in relatively unstructured formats, even within electronic health records. But with sports, I mean, I can talk about one project that we worked on a couple of years ago with a client, and this will give you a sense of the types of more experience-driven stuff that we do with regard to data. So TD Ameritrade is one of our clients, and they had an NFL sponsorship that they were looking to capitalize on in a way that felt authentic to their brand. And right around that time, they were doing a lot of thinking about confidence and the necessity of being confident as an investor to lead to more success. And that's something that TD Ameritrade can also help with through educational content and other various ways that you can become more confident as an investor. So we developed for them this kind of campaign around the football season called Most Confident Fan, which fans could opt into. It was kind of like a sweepstakes. You could opt into and give TD Ameritrade access to read your tweets or your Facebook posts where you were talking about the teams that you were excited about. And we kind of developed a combination of using some various technologies to look at sentiment and tone and some NLU to deliver each fan a confidence score, like how confident were they in their team winning a particular match across the season. And then the idea was that the most confident fans would actually get tickets to the Super Bowl. Mm-hmm. And there was this interesting byproduct, which we've actually seen around another project that we did for the election in 2016, which is this weird potential. I mean, I don't know if it's real, but like a correlation between this confidence of how people outwardly talk, at least on social media, and actual events that then happen. So we were able to there was like this loose correlation between who would actually win these matches and who won the Super Bowl that year based on this like confidence level. And we also had built a model that predicted that Trump would win that everybody thought was wrong,
Right.
Until the last minute. So.
I have another question for everyone here before we go to questions from the audience, and this just relates to how you bring automation technology to your product or your experiences. Who's involved with decision making? How is it that you are involving people from design and engineering and product, for example? How are you thinking through introducing new technology for your users and for your customers? If you could share lessons learned or best practices for how is it that you're working across your teams.
Sure. No, I mean, I'm really lucky. I've worked in a variety of teams, and one thing I'm really grateful for, and this is not a pitch to come work with us, but like, we have pretty well integrated teams. So design, engineering, product, editorial, and sales are all from the get-go are broken up into a variety of kind of independent squads. And from there, we're responsible for kind of developing our own features that are focused on, hey, here's a problem, let's solve it, and we'll agree this is the way to solve it. So when it comes to automation versus building versus having really heavily invested human resources, it's kind of different parties all agreeing, wait, why would we have someone spend 30 hours a week doing this if we could spend a month building something to automate? Or if we're going to put efforts into this, how easy is it for someone to mimic it and catch up with us? So I think a lot of it is just process, which is never the most exciting answer. I think the other answer, too, is just like, what's feasible? We're really big fans of, we're not going to spend 6 months building tools. Like to first test automation, we use software that was primarily utilized for conferences to, oh, hey, you're at a conference, here's a board of a bunch of tweets. It turns out that technology could also be used to curate and automate content and then distribute that at scale. It kind of broke their servers, but we learned, oh, people like this a lot. We should invest more in this. I think that's one thing, too, where there's such an abundance of tools out there that weren't intended to be used certain ways, but with a little bit of creativity, you can not just prototype, but actually get pretty far and then find ways to either build it yourself or figure out how to hack it.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, one thing we try to keep in mind, in addition to like starting small and making sure you have cross-functional teams in the room, both kind of from an agency side and a client side as well. Our clients are traditionally in marketing, but more and more to execute the kinds of things we're talking about, we need to be in touch with operations and other things. And it's really important that those folks are there from the beginning for the success of the things we're working on. I don't know that I'm pessimistic on AI, but I will like piggyback off that in the sense that we like to think of AI or that type of emerging tech as a tool for an overall toolkit as opposed to the solution to a problem. So if you think back like 15 years, it was like digital, and then it was mobile, and then it was social, and all of these things kind of came along, and nothing replaced the thing before it. It just became an additional layer of kind of the things that we deal with every day and the types of things we need to work with. And so we often get a lot of requests about like, let's do this AI thing, and we're kind of like, that sounds great, but let's first get together and figure out whether that's really necessary. And a majority of the time, not a majority of the time, half the time maybe we don't actually need something like that to do something really cool or exciting or valuable.
Right. I know you're looking to use the technology for a business use case, so that's the overall exploration as you're working with your client.
Yeah, I guess I can go. So for us, we have 2 people full-time and then 2 people part-time. So it's really not like hard to make decisions because there's
Fresh startup.
There's 2 of us. But in our case, it's really important because we're so small and because we have such limited resources. It's really important for us that we don't waste our time building things that nobody wants. So in that scenario, I guess our user really makes our decision for us. We're big on like making really ugly, really rough prototypes and just getting it in front of somebody as quickly as possible so we can get that really honest feedback because we have built stuff out before and then, it looks really pretty and we put it in front of somebody and they're like, oh, it's great. But then if they're not actually going to use it after that, it's a waste of our time. So we really are big proponents on like prototyping really quickly, really, just really rough and getting it in front of our users as soon as possible. So that way we can get feedback as soon as possible, and that way we don't waste our like 4-person team's time or money or resources. It's you got to be scrappy.
Right.
Yeah, and I'd echo that as well. I think for us, it's more on the production pipeline side. We're trying to build a lot of content, and when we first started building, it's obviously a manual process, and you have to figure things out, and it's staged. I think I'm echoing what everybody just said, but as you start finding the repeatable process, you can start getting into automation more, and eventually you do want to automate it because it's a waste of time to do things manually. I think one of the things that's interesting on the automation side that's happening in medical visualization is is people trying to do image processing using AI, which is very difficult. And that's because the body is so different for everybody.
everyone, yeah.
So it's a very hard challenge. And the other thing is you have privacy. So it's hard to get a lot of data sets across. So I think it's like two things that are kind of like fighting against each other. Number one is getting enough data, and then the fact that everyone's very different. So, yeah.
Well, I'd love to open it up to the audience for a few questions before we wrap up. If anybody would like to raise a hand over here, perhaps. If you could just identify yourself before asking the question.
Hi, my name is Jeff Wise. I'm a freelance science journalist. I was hoping that Noah Chestnut could perhaps elaborate on a quote, sports gambling plus AI. Ugh. Could you tell us why you feel that way?
Pretty clear for itself. No, I mean, it's also, so like, disclaimer, this is super top of mind. For those who are unaware, the Supreme Court yesterday voted in favor of the state of New Jersey, so states can now choose to legalize gambling. So I was an undergraduate during the boom of online poker. It was disgusting. I know where this potentially could go, and the AI element is probably less about AI and more about efficiencies. So when I think of sports gambling, I think there's a lot of use cases and instances where it'll make people happy, and it's pretty low stakes, and it's not a big deal. When I kind of go, ugh, that comes more from the targeting and how predatory I think some of this can be from a marketing standpoint. So what I could see happening, and we've had some Black Mirror references already today, so we'll kind of go there on your own. It'll be really easy to market and personalize the type of wagers you propose to someone based off of their individual history, as well as off of certain profiling and stereotyping. And I don't think it's unique to gambling by any means. I think it was just a little top of mind for me in this moment. We'll see that in healthcare. We'll see that in home lending. We'll see that in financial services. We will see that we see it in politics. There's so many ways in which I think AI can unreflectively give people tools to manipulate without them fully realizing it. And I think at its core, gambling has a long history of that, and also has examples of it being regulated and not doing that. So, yeah.
Thank you. Another question over here?
Hi, I'm Phil Eng from Microsoft Digital. So this question is for Aaron. So I'd say human biology has been around for quite a while. So I'd be curious to hear.
I agree.
Yeah. So I'd be really fascinated to hear some of your more interesting learnings from digitizing this whole interesting beast, and how you deal with all that data, and how you represent that, and what's the machine side of this?
Great question. I think so. It took us 15 years to get to where we are. So it's been a long process, even longer than that. I was a research assistant professor at NYU School of Medicine, and we spent a lot of time just doing grunt work. It started with the NIH Visible Human Project, where they digitized, they cryo-sliced a guy, and then they put it online. You can go NIH and see it, and that's where we got our beginnings. And then we realized that you need to have a lot of different data sets. It's not just one data set that we deal with. If you want to have everyone, like I just said, everyone's different, and there is no normal person, so to speak. And so what we have is something unique, a normalized human body. And it requires a lot of different data sets. And so we had to work with lots and lots and lots of different teams over a long period of time to build what we have. And that's what made it so hard. We couldn't even start building disease states and disease conditions until we were very confident in our current human body model. And so maybe 2 years ago is when we started to really accelerate and build out the disease states and disease conditions. What we're doing now is we're adding metadata layers to it with SNOMED and all these different ICD-11 coding, so that people can look it up and add it to electronic health records. So it's a long, laborious, kind of a boring process to get to where we are right now. But I think it's getting more excited because I think we started to complete the first phase of it, and it's ongoing. It's never ending. But we are building momentum. So I don't know if that answers your question completely, but it's long, boring, and painful, I guess is the answer. It's just a lot of work. And you have to look at every vessel. You have to look at everything. And, it's still, there's no perfect model yet. But we're trying our best to, how do you define that,
I think we have time for one final question up here in the front. Just 1 second.
Yeah, Aaron, just speaking on that, can you tell us, right, what are the, can you tell us what are the immediate applications of what you've built? I think that could be exciting for all of us to hear.
Yeah, I think some of the applications that are very exciting, augmented reality, it's something that I'm very passionate about and very excited about. It's because you can see the human body in a way that you've never seen it before. And I've been on some panels before to talk about it. But we started working with the HoloLens and be able to see a full-scale human body and see the vessels and how they interact. I was at a simulation laboratory in Washington, D.C. at a very large, and this cardiologist put it on, and he was looking at it. He's like, I've never really understood how the heart and the rest of the cardiovascular system looked until now. And I'm like, that's awesome. Right? But yeah, that's one of the things I'm excited about, the way we're integrating to electronic health records and being able to just add data to different parts of the body. We made a lot of progress in point-of-care applications where people are putting us into wallboards and just educating the patients. And it leads to better informed consent, better patient compliance, and health. So yeah, there's a bunch of things we're really excited about. It's an exciting time.
Can I ask you one question on that?
Sure.
I think it's the integrating with health records.
Yes.
So maybe I'm too futuristic, or I don't know. Are you able to model, like when you have a patient come through, are you able to pin down
their exact physiology?
No, not that, but at least what you have at this point in time and pointing the diseases, attaching to it so that you can
Track the disease. Yeah.
So that proactively provide. I mean, is that what you meant when you say health records, or are you talking about much more simpler than that?
Well, there are two ways it's being used. One is like you have a 3D body, and then you can put points on it and then add annotations to that body, which is somewhat simple, but it's in the cloud. People think it's advanced. And the other one is being able to immediately visualize, once you have some kind of diagnosis, being able to explain that to the patient in a way that makes sense to them via the anatomy, like speaking the language of being able to see a normal heart go from a normal heart to something with AFib or VFib, and then explain to the patient why they should change their behavior. So that's a very powerful usage of the system.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I think that's all we have time for. I want to give a round of